In furtherance of our discussion last week, particularly the state of the nation, we went back to the streets to collect more thoughts on ideas on how we can improve the current state of the country, Nigeria. Later on in the program, we speak to the All Progressive Congress Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi, who speaks to us about the correlation between the APC manifesto and the policies implemented by the federal government. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back on the Osasu Show.
Well, this is a protest. It's about good governance. Nigerians are coming out, citizens are coming out. This is not about a group. Also, this is about Nigerians coming out and demanding and saying that enough is enough of the bad governance, enough is enough of the intimidation, enough is enough of the impunity in this country, of people doing whatever they like to do and get away with it. It is time that our leaders realize that they are here for the citizens, for the betterment of the citizens. The citizens gave them their mandate. In a democracy, good governance is a given. It's not something that should be begged for. It's something that should be the right of the people. And the people are demanding that they want equal playing field in their own country. Situation whereby there are different standards for people, ordinary people, and certain standards for those who are in power or related to power is not okay and it's not acceptable, and we will not take it anymore. And citizens have come out today and they are demanding, they are activating their office of the citizen. I want every Nigerian to understand the fact that the office of the citizen is the biggest office in the land. It is not the office of the president. The president and all others in government are employees of the citizens, and in that case, they must work for the citizens.
The reason we're out for this protest today, as the hashtag says, is hashtag I stand with Nigeria, hashtag One Voice Nigeria, is to all come out and speak with one voice and speak loudly. As we always say, no Nigerian is more Nigerian than any Nigerian. That the office of the citizen has been activated, which is the highest office of the land. And we have come out to tell our employees that it is time they deliver on their mandates that they promised to Nigerians during their campaigns all the way to the election time. And right now that they're in office, the change we voted for is not this change. The change we voted for is a change from the way the past administrations, not just only the administration that was kicked out, but past administrations have always governed this country, that there must be a change from such levels of maladministration, and we demanded for good governance, which the APC government promised Nigerians, and so we took our mandates to them and we expect that they deliver on their promises. Today we are here because those promises they made, not one has been delivered except for the fight against Boko Haram, which here we must give kudos to the administration. They have done well, but even at that, there is still fights ongoing. The Boko Haram fight has given birth to IDP situation, which today in itself is a rising menace in this country, where we have our citizens dying due to hunger, due to lack of food, and where we have the present Secretary General of the Federation being accused, and where he was also found guilty of misappropriating funds meant for IDPs, and is still in the office today. Even where the National Assembly has said that he should be removed from office, he is still in the office with the tacit support of the presidency. And one of our demands today is that the SGF must step down. The SGF must be asked to leave his office because he's been found guilty of corrupt practices. For a government that's made corruption fighting mantra its key word during the campaign, this is preposterous. preposterous that we will find an SGF who has been found wanting, still in office, with the tacit support of the presidency. It is a no-no, and one of the reasons why we are out is also because of that, and demanding for good governance. Food prices are going up, 7 different forex exchange rates for different class of people. We are all Nigerians. We all deserve a fair share of our resources. It is not meant for only the people in power or for the ruling class. Someday something will give. The day the poor man will not find something to eat, he will come for you and I, and for every one of them that is in office. So it's time to wake up and act. That's why we are out. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Osasu Show. With me now is Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi, who is the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress. Thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So, sir, we're looking through the APC manifesto and still discussing the state of the nation. Obviously, there were promises the party made during the 2015 campaigns that Nigerians are still waiting to be actualized. So can you talk to us about some of the achievements of the federal government in terms of its correlation with the All Progressive Congress manifesto?
The manifesto covers everything. Then the government says this is the aspect that the president of the country now said this is what I want to do. And if you follow the campaign of President Muhammadu Buhari, he said he would do 3 major things. And this became the driving force of his campaign, or thrust of his campaign. 1, I'm going to fight and defeat Boko Haram and restore security. 2, I'm going to fight corruption. And that's why he came up with the, if Nigeria does not kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. Then 3, I will create employment for young people by developing agriculture and solid minerals. Those are the 3 cardinal focus of his. Now let's take the first one, the issue of the insurgency and Boko Haram. You see here that Boko Haram is able to do occasional throwing of bombs here and there. But I think the government, one area that the government has recorded a major achievement actually is in the destruction of Boko Haram as a fighting force that was able to hold territory in Nigeria by the end of 2014, 2015. Don't forget that at the time we were preparing for election, Boko Haram actually had its flags hoisted on Nigerian territory, claiming to have established a caliphate. That is no longer the case. Then 2, you had the infamous Sambisa forest that was a kind of fortress for Boko Haram. That has been taken away from them. So they really don't have the kind of organizational skill to be able to confront a national army as they used to have. You know, it's still a work in progress, but significant progress has been achieved within the 2 years. I still have 2 years. Now, on the second issue of corruption, everyone may have different interpretations of what is going on regarding the fight against corruption. But for us as a party, we are delighted by the fact that every single day, conversations about corruption is dominating the political space. The fact that Nigerians are talking about corruption the way we were not talking about it 2 years ago. The fact that every single day you wake up, you open the newspapers, you listen to radio, you hear stories about somebody being apprehended, corruption is taking place somewhere, whistleblowers are encouraged. The fact that it is in the national conversation, I think is in itself is an indication of progress we are making. The culture of impunity that characterized what was happening before this administration no longer exists. One last point I will make on this issue of corruption is that I was a minister in the previous administration. I was Minister of Youth Development and Sports. One thing that I've gone through my mind in the last couple of days since the issue of this $9-point-something million that was found in a house in Kaduna happened. among other things, is how would this kind of thing be happening? And we will not know. Do you get what I'm saying? And in spite of how I felt, in fact, in spite of my conviction, I felt almost vicariously liable, you know, that I was in that system. And how was it possible for this kind of thing to happen?
I want you to discuss a little about, curbing systemic corruption, because a guest who we had earlier in the show, we were speaking to him about corruption fighting is not necessarily chasing after individuals, but plugging the loopholes. So what enables an individual to walk into any of the MDA's ministry, departments, or agencies and siphon 200 million, siphon 700 million, right? So fighting corruption would be ensuring that, okay, this has happened in this organization, this has happened in the past administration, this is happening in this administration. How can we plug the loopholes once and for all and end the systemic corruption that's going on?
That's a very important question you've asked, the one you ended with. How do we plug the loopholes and end systemic corruption? But if we take one step backward, I insist that the fact that allegations of corruptions are being publicized in real time is an indication of progress. We didn't have to wait until after 4 years or after 8 years to hear that something happened. The fact that people are making these allegations and people are being challenged,
Is that kudos to the media or to the government or to your party?
The media existed when this kind of mind-boggling corruption that we are hearing after the fact were happening. The media in Nigeria had always been a robust system. And if the media had always existed in a democracy, and it was after the previous administration that we're now getting to know some of the things we are knowing, then the missing element was that you would logically conclude that it's the government. Do you get what I'm saying? And I think it's also because there is a deliberate focus of prioritizing of the fight against corruption. And that is why some of these things are coming forward. Because, you see, in a way, society responds to government. If the government says, oh, corruption doesn't mean anything, or it's actually corruption is not the problem, I think people will take a cue from that, largely. But when the government said, I want to fight corruption, and the first thing you do when you say you want to fight corruption is that the people hold you to a higher level of standards of accountability, because you say you want to fight corruption.
But that's only sustained when you do something about the allegations, right? So allegations are coming up, but what is, you don't speak for the government, obviously,
yes,
but
certainly.
APC and the government are, bedmates in the sense that there would be no precedent right now without the help or the vehicle of the All Progressive Congress. So the party also has to be held accountable for the actions and inactions of the federal government.
Certainly, I agree with you. If I have a son and he goes out and throw a stone into the neighbor's compound and break their windows, there's a level to which I can be held accountable, right? So I'm not saying we are not involved or we are not a part of that.
Okay, but back to my major question about the allegations of corruption and actually doing something about it. Yeah. You mentioned that the reason we see more allegations coming out now is because the person who is in charge has, showed
that's what he wants to
efforts.
Do, yeah.
Exactly. But these allegations have come out in recent times of people in his administration, but we haven't really seen any concrete action.
You seem to be more interested in this particular thing, but I will come back. There's a fundamental question you asked me earlier that I'm interested in answering, which is the issue of systemic corruption. Yes. That's very important.
Very important.
Yes. You see, I'll come back to the one you asked. The issue of systemic corruption, it's easier to identify, to deal with individual cases of corruption. But it takes a long time to build a system that's actually resilient and make it difficult for even the most corrupt-minded person to abuse the trust, the public trust bestowed on him. Like I said earlier, I was in the system. And I'm telling you that apart from the corruption of greed, which almost borders on insanity, you know, when people take billions that they don't really need, you know, and I think that borders on insanity. There are people who engage in what you call systemic corruption, who pilfers, distorts, you know, just because they want to be able to get by. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but I believe strongly that if we are able to build an effective transport system that will make it almost unnecessary for anybody to want to own a car. If you live in the UK, you know having a car is actually a burden, especially if you live in London.
Yeah.
You build an effective transport system that makes it unnecessary for everybody to have to own a car. You build an efficient medical system that make it almost, you don't have to have cash to access Medicare. It's guaranteed that your child will go to a good school, public school. You don't have to pay through your nose for a child to go through public school. You don't need to have a generator to have electricity. I think you will have caught what you call systemic corruption by 70%. If you've seen a man whose wife is on the hospital bed in need of operation and he desperately needs to raise money, that's not the time you preach to that man about corruption.
And I enjoy the fact that you say that, because these are the same ideologies your party had preached in 2015.
Exactly.
So we Nigerians voted your party in to implement these ideologies you're sharing now.
The point I'm making is that this thing, that's why I started earlier by telling you that you don't wish all this in place. You don't do all this I've told you in 4 years, or even in 8 years as a matter of fact. Right?
Mr. Abdullahi, I know you're still avoiding that question I asked you, but that's okay. So let's quickly round up. So we've spoken about the role of the APC and the role of the federal government, and I think you've made it very clear they're bedmates but not the same person, right? So in the build up to 2019, because 2019 is just right around the corner, so how do Nigerians bring themselves to trusting or voting again for a party when in reality the party is not necessarily the one that leads, right? Because, for example, you've just made it very clear that, look, APC has its ideologies and the federal government has picked from those ideologies and is trying to, exactly, and is trying to implement. But at the end of the day, the individual can come and decide not to implement on any of the party ideologies. So in a democracy, in order to further democracy and the ways Nigerians vote and think of the individuals they elect into power, how do we bridge that disconnect between the individual and the party's ideologies and ensure that next time when we go into the polling booth, when APC knocks on our doors and tells us, vote APC, the people of progress, the people of change, you know, we're voting for the party and the individual who's going to implement the promises, the manifesto that they're campaigning on?
I'm going to say that no system in the world can fully satisfy everyone.
Agreed.
That is number one. I'm going to add to that wherever a government tries to implement its own understanding or administer its own understanding of a solution to an existing problem, there will be losers and there will be gainers. There will be immediate pains and there will be immediate gains, right? Nigeria's economy has been in recession for a while, 2 years or so. But if you listen carefully to economists, they will tell you that Nigerian economy had begun to show signs of recession as far back as 2013 or 2014, right? We may not know now if President Jonathan had continued what direction the economy would have taken. We may not know, we are not clairvoyant, you know. But the current government has accepted the responsibility and must take the responsibility, right, for whatever is happening now, regardless of what has happened in the past, as far as the managing of the economy is concerned. So we're not saying, oh, is there a good government? No, that's not what we're saying.
That's what the federal government has been saying.
No, but people, individuals have said that, right?
The spokesman for the federal government.
Individuals have said that, and that is their interpretation of.
But the APC, on the other hand, is not making excuses.
We are saying that as a party that accepted the responsibility of governing, we will want to take the credit for whatever our government does, and we also want to accept the responsibility for what inadequacies or whatever shortcomings is noted in our government. Because like I said, we have a responsibility to self-correct internally. Now, back to the main question that you asked about the situation in the country, the distinction between the party and the individual, which I think is quite fundamental. And I think this question has engaged the minds of so many political scientists in this country. I strongly believe that if our democracy was not truncated in 1966, we would have been far better than where we are today in terms of democratic development. It was truncated in 1966. We had 3 years civil war, then we came back, the military continued until 1979, then we had 4 years interregnum of democracy, then before we. So all these years of military rule that have truncated our democracy, they must have come with significant pathologies. You cannot wish them away, right? So all those things affect the nature of democracy. Now, what you will have is that the parties will still need to get stronger. The parties are not as strong as they should be. And I like to give an example that a major indication is that you had PDP that has been in power since 1999 up till 2015, right? That's a period of like, how many years?
16.
16 years. It should concern us that one electoral defeat will lead to the collapse of a party that has been in existence for 16 years. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's an indication that we need to work harder in building stronger political parties. You know, the stronger our political parties, then the stronger the ability for those parties to hold their own representatives accountable. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm not going to sit here to tell you, oh, there are no problems, everything is perfect, we are fine. I'm not going to say that. I'm saying that there are challenges, and as long as we are willing to acknowledge those challenges, and as long as we are willing to wake up every day to work on those challenges, I think someday we're going to get there.
Okay.
I believe so.
Mr. Bolaji Abdullahi, thank you so much for coming on today's program and discussing with us how we can sort of bridge the gap between the party and the individuals that we choose to represent us as well. So we'll keep on discussing and brainstorming solutions, sustainable solutions that would enable us, building up to 2019, how we can kind of, vote a party in who will then hold accountable the representatives we put forward to Nigerians to further our democracy, number one, and number two, implement the promises, the campaign promises, the manifesto that was campaigned on during the elections. So we'll take another short break. Until then, take very good care.
Some say Africa's golden era is gone. A time when great African kings and queens built their dreams into empires, stretching across the continent and beyond. But we say a new era is upon us. A new set of African kings and queens are on the rise. Driven by the same wealth of character as the kings and queens before them. Building new empires of enterprise with the right partnership. So rise up wherever you are, new kings and queens of Africa. Embrace your full potential and be proud of your heritage. Heritage Bank, your timeless wealth partner.
That's it for today's program. Don't forget you can read news on sustainable development and current affairs across Africa on tostvnetwork.com. You can also watch extended clips from this interview on theosasushow.com. Follow us on social media at TOSTV Network and at The Osasu Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll see you same time, same place next week. And until then, take very good care of yourself.